Hey, it's Guy DiMartino. I thought I would jump on this Saturday and give what I believe is a PSA for all folks who live together and have lived together for a long period of time, are not married, to protect themselves. But first, if you'll see, I have one of my favorite lawyers' shirt on today, my friend Bernard Nomberg, who is a workers' compensation and disability lawyer in Birmingham, Alabama. Bernard is a great person, and if somebody should need any assistance in Birmingham, you should reach out to Bernard. But back to my issue today. Let's talk about Jack and Jill. Jack and Jill had separate lives in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, and both of them ended up going through some pretty bad divorces when they were in their late 30s and early 40s. They met each other when they were in the 50s and decided that they liked each other and wanted to spend the rest of their life together. So Jill moved into Jack's home. Jack was a pretty successful guy in his life, and he made significantly more money than Jill. But they decided, because of what happened in their prior marriages and because of some scars, that they weren't going to have any kids anymore, so they didn't have any reason to get married. They discussed what they would want for each other, but they never went, either of them, to an attorney, or they never did any pre-planning of what would happen if one of them would get sick or if one of them would pass away. Now, Jack really loved Jill, and Jack wanted Jill to be taken care of. Jack was like me. He liked to ride bicycles. He's out one day riding his bicycle, and a vehicle comes across and clips him. He ends up rolling over the handlebars. He ends up landing on his head, and even though he had a helmet, he had a bleed. He loses consciousness, and then he goes to the hospital. He needs some treatment at the hospital, so the police officers and the medical personnel look through his phone, and they say, well, here's Jill's contact. They call Jill. Jill runs over to the hospital. Jill wants information regarding Jack. They ask, well, are you Jack's wife? She says, no. So, well, do you have a power of attorney? She says, no. Do you have a healthcare power of attorney? Are you able to make any decisions on his behalf for healthcare? She says, no. So what happens is that Jack and Jill lived together for a long time, but in the eyes of the law, in the eyes of the healthcare system, she had no standing to make decisions on behalf of Jack while Jack was in the hospital and could not make decisions for himself. So even though Jack and Jill were in a really strong relationship, Jack's kids didn't really appreciate Jill. For whatever reason, looking from afar, they were thinking maybe Jill was taking advantage of Jack. They didn't understand the relationship. They didn't understand what they did. So the kids get involved, who lived out of state, because they were the next of kin to make any decisions for Jack. Jill could not make any of the healthcare decisions, any of the treatment decisions. And when he went in for surgery, the doctor wouldn't come out and talk to her regarding his medical condition because of the healthcare privacy protections. This could have been resolved multiple ways, and they didn't have to get married to resolve it. They could have done a healthcare representative. They could have done a HIPAA release, which would allow the hospital and the treating physicians to release information regarding Jack's medical condition to Jill. They could have done a durable power of attorney, which would have sprung into effect at the fact that he was incapacitated, whether it was temporary incapacitation or permanent incapacitation. See, there were a number of documents that could have been done, which were very inexpensive. They could have did them on their own as long as they followed the proper procedure and protocol to resolve this heartache. In this situation between Jack and Jill, it didn't go on for a long time because they went in, they evacuated the hematoma or the blood clot in his brain. He came to, he was able to make his own decisions in a few days. But what would have happened if he was unable to make decisions? What would have happened if he would have passed away and that home was in his name? And even though he wanted Jill to live there for the rest of her life, the kid said, no, we're selling it. You need to get out. These are things, these are difficult conversations that folks have to have. But these are things that happen every day. And just putting together some important documents discussing these issues would have resolved a lot of conflict by Jill worrying about Jack not getting better, worrying about the medical care that Jack was getting, and then worrying about herself and the potential of losing a place to live where she lived for 15 or 20 years. So how do you resolve this issue? You have this discussion with the person that you're living with, especially if you are not married. You go out and you do power of attorney, healthcare representative, sometimes it's called a healthcare proxy, and a HIPAA release, which will allow the healthcare providers to release information to the person that you love who is not your spouse. If you have any questions about an Indiana estate matter, you can always reach out to me. I am Guy DiMartino. Have yourself a great day.